It's time to take a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. And joining me in the studio is lawyer and social development advocate Jide Ologun. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Also joining us is Shijibomi Adebiyi Bennett, a public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us
Thanks
as well.
for having me.
All right, let's head straight to the papers now, and I begin with The Nation. Protesters adamant despite government's approval of requests. IG summons ex-SARS operatives. SWAT now police anti-robbery squad. Sanwo-Olu, Wike, Uzodinma, Makinde identify with end-SARS protests. All right, to the front page of the Daily Times now. How 13.08 trillion naira 2021 budget will boost economy. You find that story on the front page of the Daily Times. To the front page of the News Direct, SWAT to replace SARS IGP. New team to commence training next week. Governors to meet IG on Wednesday. Protesters shut down Lagos, make fresh demand. Difficult for police to end SARS. Stakeholders, Nigerians' right to protest SARS brutality, killings, Lawan. And on the front page of the Daily Trust, the Inspector General of Police replaces SARS with SWAT. New outfit shouldn't be mere name. Hashtag NSAS protest ground states. Deploy SARS for Boko Haram war, Borno governor. Protesters generate over 25 million naira in 5 days. And on the front page of the Leadership newspaper, to forestall crime wave, Inspector General of Police replaces FSAS with SWAT. Well, that's the final paper we'll be reviewing this morning. But let's look at the story on the Nation newspaper, which is carried on almost all the pages of the papers this morning. Still looking at the hashtag NSAS protest, and the Nation is focusing on the fact that protesters are still adamant in spite of the government approving all their demands. Let's start with you, Barrister Jide Ologun. Would you say that with this approval from the government, it is a win for the protesters?
It should be, but that it should, yes, that's my position, because we have to monitor the implementation. Don't forget that this is not the first time directives have come from the government to reform SARS and promises have been made to the people. So we need to work on that trust gap, and it's very important. And don't forget also that foundationally, SARS itself came into being in 1992 because a colonel was killed and the military rose up against the police. And to curb the wave of crime that increased then, the Commissioner of Police had to set up this unit. It's not the only unit within the Crime Investigation and Intelligence Department of the police to work on the ground. And eventually, when the military and the police reconciled, it became a formal unit. And 28 years down the line, we can see the crisis we have. So we need to work on sustainability. And right now, it's not just about that unit. It's about police brutality. It's about extortion. It's about oppression. It's about law enforcement agency now perceived as a crime-oriented agency. You see, and that is why the people are coming out to say, okay, we have trusted you, government, to on your own carry out reforms. And if you cannot, let's see how we can help you. So this time around, the protesters are going to monitor. It may be, the protest may be suspended. And I think for the nation also, we need to work effectively right now and deliver on this, because if you go on Wikipedia, and investors do that, you want to look at the economic environment. What you see there right now is that though SARS has been effective, it's now associated with extortion, corruption, and when you have such a society, you may not be able to drive the foreign direct investments that you need. And you add that to the hardship, the pains, the sorrow, tears, and blood that we have in the nation. So the government must rise up and conclusively let the government go back to Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution that says that the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. And these two issues are on the front burner now. Secure the people, let there be vibrant welfare. And that is when we can claim to have good governance.
All right. You mentioned something which I'd like Shijibomi to react to. You talked about suspension of the protest. But from what we are seeing, it seems the protesters are still adamant, Shijibomi. Do you think that perhaps they should continue till they see that the government is walking the talk? Or they should suspend to see how government moves from here?
Yes, I also believe the protest should be suspended. But like someone said yesterday, and if you look at it critically, it wasn't a protest that was started by one person or one group.
Right.
This is an all-inclusive protest. So the same way it graduated to become what it is today, you give it time for it to dissipate or decline till everybody is satisfied. The government is responding to people's, to the protesters' demands. Yeah. So when they see that, when they see trust, when they see sincerity, I think gradually the protest will decline. But I don't want them also to lose focus or lose sight of what is at stake. It's not about just SARS. It's the total police reform. I've also had my own experiences with SARS on Benin Ore Road 2 times, which were not fatal, but which were very, very intimidating. But the very experience I had that I can't forget, it's not even SARS, was in a police station in Lagos, along Pedro. And, driving along that road around 8 o'clock, there was a traffic warden at that time. I don't know how it happened because that was very late, like past 7 to 8. And there is a barrack of a police, there is a police barrack around that place and a police station also. So because I could see the traffic was much, I wanted to turn and take the route where I was coming from. So the traffic guy said, instead of creating more gridlock, I should enter the police station and turn and come out, which I did. Well, that was 2011. I was in my early 30s, driving a fine car, and I entered, I turned, I wanted to come out. And all of a sudden, I saw like 6 policemen, their guns on me. And I showed them the guy that said I should turn, and they said I should park. The first thing they requested from me was money, and I said no. So they checked all the car. Thank God I had a lady friend with me, and they didn't allow me to go. Before we could say Jack Robinson, I found myself in the DPO's office. It took the grace and the intelligence of my friend that went to call his father, there is a big church in Oxford Street around that place at the junction. The overseer, the GO of that church came and rescued me because what we're saying could not have been palatable because right in my hearing, they were already phoning Abuja and said there was a Boko Haram guy that drove inside to bomb the police station. So these are the things we need to clarify. Young guys, looking successful or even successful, driving along Lagos roads, are being intimidated every day.
Perhaps this is what the Inspector General of Police is trying to also address when he talked about these people, those who will be in charge of SWAT now having to go through psychological examination, some level of training. But it seems that is not going down well with a lot of Nigerians, which still boils back to trust that you mentioned. I wonder how we can build that to move forward, because right now there's so much tension. Can something give to allow that trust be built?
Everything that is created for usage is subject to abuse. I will advise that the police should go back to the vision. The vision of the police is to help facilitate, a vibrant, safe environment for economic development. And the mission, the vehicle, is to ensure that they are people-friendly and that they respect the fundamental human rights of the citizens so that we can work in synergy. But right now, the police has derailed from that concept. So can we go back? And scripturally, when you find a people without a vision, or if the vision gets blurred, they perish.
Right.
And right now, what is going on in this country is that if this abuse is sustained, you are radicalizing the people. He just mentioned Biniore Road. I've had my own bad taste also. And sometimes an IGP comes to say, we are scrapping these checkpoints. Within 3 weeks, they are back. Is it true that this extortion gets to the top? We need a lot of issues to redress. And this is a brilliant opportunity to begin to reform Nigeria. Because I'm disturbed. If after 60 years of self-management, sovereignty, what we have to celebrate is togetherness and not prosperity, we have issues. So right now, we should deliberately and sincerely begin to consider the future of this country, particularly when we have the teeming youth that has lost confidence in the sincerity of the government. And if we go back to that, we'll bounce back on the path of prosperity.
All right, Shijibomi, unfortunately, we can't take your last word on this, but we must leave the conversation here now.
So we'll start with the New Telegraph. It says here, SARS operatives to undergo psychomedical examination. That's in the New Telegraph this morning. Of course, the writer says protesters ground major cities as federal government okays 5-point demand. IGP summoned defunct squad's personnel for debriefing. Special Weapons and Tactics team replaces disbanded squad. Sanwo-Olu floats 200 million naira victims trust fund. Protesters defy Wike victims of rights violation extortion to submit memoranda. The blueprint says here, mixed reaction as IGP replaces SARS with SWAT. National Economy says here, IMF revises upwards Nigeria's 2020 growth forecast. That's according to the National Economy. We will move to Business Day. It says here, Nigeria's cancer sufferers struggle for care under 10 radiotherapy machines instead of 200. That's in Business Day. Nigeria's cancer sufferers struggle for care under 10 radiotherapy machines instead of 200. We move to the Punch newspaper. It says here, soldiers confront protesters. NBA demands audit of SARS evil centers. Protesters occupy Lagos, Abuja, Oyo streets. Protest spreads to Kaduna, Enugu, Rivers, others. Presidential committee approves panel within 1 week to probe human rights abuses. Adamant meets governors. Today, a Senate proposes law to tackle extrajudicial killings. We move to the Guardian newspaper this morning. It says here, agitations spread nationwide. That's in the Guardian newspaper this morning. And it says here, counter protests in Borno, Kano. Makinde's deputy Oyo lawmaker, victims of brutality join march. OPC demands compensation for slain members since Abacha's regime. Inspector General summons defunct SARS personnel to Abuja. Don't use live bullets. NBA warns police. So we'll stick with this story in the Guardian, and of course the one in the New Telegraph. A New Telegraph says here, SARS operatives to undergo psychomedical examination. And we'll start our analysis with this one, gentlemen. Looking at this headline, SARS operatives to undergo psychomedical examination. Will this solve any problem?
I don't think there is much result that can be gotten from there, because these are part of the things and processes of recruitment. I believe that when a policeman is about to be recruited or is being recruited into the MPF, those are the things they do for them. What are the processes? That's why the protesters are saying they don't want the police to handle even the investigations about the people that have been killed or maimed, and at the same time, even the process of reform, they want something from an independent body, because records and patterns have shown that the police cannot be trusted with things like that. And this thing did not start today. We have, like 15 or 20 years ago, the Apple killings in Abuja. So then
the Alu-4 killings
in Port Harcourt. Things have happened, and the youth have, have always borne the brunt of all this things. So it is getting to them now. So, and we thank God that it is at a time that we can see it is not politically motivated. So nobody can say what is happening now. Yesterday, when the governor of Lagos State was addressing them, and he even mentioned I've set aside 200 million to compensate victims, and we're looking at talking to your leaders. They answered him. There is no leader.
There's no leader. Yeah, so, it's an organic growth.
Yes. So these are the things we're saying, and it's good for our democracy. That means we're starting to put politicians and leaders on their toes, because you now know that any bad step or misstep from you can make people to galvanize and, can erupt into something like this. So I think we towing the line of all this cycle. The problem is money. So the psychoanalysis you want to do, even after you have done it, and somebody still gets a gun after his salary has been increased and still sees the Naira note, I think it will reverse any psychoanalysis that you have done.
So Barrister, how do we change these mindsets now? Like what he has said, the problem is money, and the police force, they have the gun, so they will be able to use it and this is one of the agitations of the protesters, end police brutality. So how do we change the mindset and ensure that our police force actually protect the lives of citizens?
To work on the value system of the governance structure of the country. And we have advised, you need to look out through the window and find out. I did a study on the top 10 best policed countries in the world. Canada takes the lead, followed by Netherlands. You find Germany, you find China, you find France. What have they done? There is a vision for the police mandate. There is a mission to help create an enabling environment for national prosperity, to be people-friendly and respect the fundamental human rights. And so how have we derailed from it? And there are stressors in the society. And so we have come to the point where in Nigeria, it's like a survivor's value system. I must survive. And in the quest for survival, you use what you have to get what you want.
So will a psychological evaluation solve that?
If we are deliberate about it, it's a function of mindset. Like I said now, you compare the Nigerian police with the Californian police, which are like the highest paid police in the world. And California is just a state, not a nation. So, and those are some of the demands now. The welfare, their mindset. Do you really see yourself as a friend of people, or do you consider the people deserving your protection? You see, these are things that should come in. And having said that, you need to upscale it to the higher hierarchy. There was a time in this country when a senator accused the former Inspector General of Police of collecting billions of naira from corporate organizations. Are these corruption elements still there? They see what the superiors do. They must. Do we set targets for them? Let's face these questions we are denying. Is it true that when the policeman is posted out there, he is to return with a certain amount of money at weekend or whatever? If these elements are still there, you may take them for psycho-medical evaluation. But if the basic value system that must effect the change is not tampered with or fine-tuned, they will continue. I said it. SARS was formed in 1992 as a response to the killing of a military officer at a checkpoint. 28 years down the line, we are still having crisis. So let's review the holistic management of our governance system. Is it about merit? Have we been able to fulfill the conditions of Section 16 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, that says we should harness our resources to provide maximum happiness? Welfare, a sustainable, self-reliant economy. Have we been able to achieve that? If not, will we be working on the infrastructure? We are now talking about special weapons and tactics. You are giving them weapons, but you are not working on the superstructure.
So it's beyond the name.
The human element is the superstructure.
It's beyond the name change.
That's just mere branding. Like I said now, 28 years down the line. It's just like when we also gained independence in 1960. I think by now, those who colonized us should be learning from us about prosperity. But the reverse is the case. So let's work inwards. Let's check our value system. And it will help us a lot.
Siji, when we're looking at the protests that have gone now, like the meeting with the governor yesterday, they said there were no leaders. Do you think there's been a reaction to, a favorable reaction actually, to the demands? Do you think this will go to other sectors of the economy?
Thank you for that question, because I wanted to take it from where it stopped, the value system. Now, we should also be very, very careful, because it's not just about SARS. It's the total police and the total policing in Nigeria. That's one. Number two is the decadence in the fiber of the polity and the economy. Now, every society gets the kind of leaders they deserve. Same thing, every society gets the kind of police they deserve. He has said something about the first 10 best policing or police in the world. You will see those countries, the kind of citizens and the mindset and the orientation. So if you want to do anything in Nigeria, in the civil service, in parastatals, in any security agencies, the same thing you get from the police is what you get from those parastatal or agencies. The only difference is you have given the police the gun and they interface with the populace every time. Any ministry you get to, you want to do anything, don't give them what they want to get from you, you won't get your job done.
Unless you pay.
So that's it. So the short term is that punitive measure. For me, it's short term and long term. We should have a proper punitive measure. We've talked about Apple 6, we've talked about the Alu 4, we've talked about so many of these killings. Have you seen anybody being punished? Even electoral officers, even herdsmen crisis. Have you really seen? Justice must not just be done, but must be seen to have been done. So when you look at punitive measures as a short term, then we now look at the overall solution, which is what he just mentioned, our moral values. We should start it from the cradle.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, of course, for doing justice to this topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.